Hello, 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 Ganja Goons in the house. I am with Dr. Ellis, one of the chief strategy officers of DOXX. And really, I'm very happy to do this AMA. I feel like the first time I heard about you guys or met you guys was through one of your investors, Uber Geek.
Uh-huh.
And he told me about, hey, Tedi, you need to look at DOXX. And then Prankar, he reached out to me and he's like, hey, you know, you should really look into us. We're all developers. We all have a tech background. We do this type of what's the program? Zion? How do you what's the
So
actual
yeah,
pronunciation?
Zion is one of the utilities that we've developed. There's a couple pieces to that, but we can talk about that a little later.
Sure. And now, one of the things I want to give you the opportunity is to introduce yourself and explain the role that you do at DOXX for everybody.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Ellis Jerusalem. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Michigan. Although what largely brings me here is my combination of data science background as well as experience in crypto. So I would consider myself a little bit of a newbie to crypto because I've only been in it since 2017. But that's because a number of my friends were in on things like the Ethereum pre-sale, or they were talking to me about Bitcoin, about a decade ago now. So I think in terms of adoption, I'm an OG at this point, but in terms of my friends, I'm still a bit of a newbie. And when
I will say it is crazy. You have friends that were in the Ethereum pre-sale. Like what?
I remember somebody trying to get me into it, and
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
Ethereum, what the hell is that? I've got 3 or 4 of those stories that are kind of awesome / embarrassing at the same time. Like they have T-shirts, they're those guys. Okay.
I'll tell you, for me, when I first about Bitcoin, I was doing a computer science class at MIT in Boston, right, in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And some guy comes up to me and he's like, dude, there's this thing, Bitcoin. It's like $5. You should do it. They just made it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know who you are. Like, I'm trying to get through this AP course. Like, why are you shilling this to me right now? But I kill myself every day. I'm like, I should have looked into it. I should have looked into it. It's a horrible feeling.
At this point, I've had about 10 or 12 of those, so I'm okay with it.
Oh man,
You know,
experience.
There actually, before Bitcoin, there's this thing called e-bullion, which was like pegged to gold, and so people would use it to trade forex. So I was actually
What?
doing cryptocurrency trading before cryptocurrency existed.
Ebolian. That's hilarious.
It was like fractional gold that you could like transfer, and now it was obviously centralized, but
Yeah.
the basic idea of trading, like a kind of digital asset against foreign currencies, that was the thing. Anyway, a little bit about me. I'm a licensed psychologist, so I'm an expert in behavioral prediction, behavioral assessment. But I also have postdoctoral training in data science, mainly use Python, but I do know R, and I can fudge some SQL, through some Python calls. And I've been actively trading crypto since 2017, and got in a few things like, probably my best play was I went in heavy on Floki at 15 million market cap.
Oh wow.
Before it hit 3 billion. So that was it was a genuine 200x. I've had a couple of those, and then a lot more stories of woulda, coulda, shouldas, and getting burned in some rug pulls pretty bad. Like anybody who's been in this space for a while.
Oh God. Don't even tell me that, Dr. Ellis. I literally got potentially rug pulled yesterday before it even launched. But I'm talking to them. Let's see what they do. It's quite interesting.
So what got our project started at DOXX is
Mm-hmm.
there was a token, Rick and Morty, right? And
the TV show, right? Rick and Morty,
yeah,
the TV show. Okay, yeah.
right. So there's this whole slew of meme tokens, cartoon tokens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did a risk calculation, which was like, there's a 40% chance I'll get rugged within 2 weeks. That was my math. And there's a 20% chance it'll 10x or more. And then there's, the in between is that it'll kind of go sideways. And so like I did the calculations, like, okay, only put in what, I could afford to lose. and assumed it was, it was a risk, and it rugged. But what was interesting in the aftermath is the people who got rugged were a mix. There were some of us who were very experienced traders. And, we just took calculated bets on things that were long shots, but, high risk, high reward. And there were a lot of people who got into it because they're fans of the show. And so they had no clue. So some of them, this was their first experience and they got rugged hard. And so some of us got together, we were kind of chatting about how to rehab it. And because of my familiarity with Floki, if you know Floki, it was rehabbed from a rug. I had an idea about how we might go about doing that, talked to some other people, and we sort of coalesced a team. And it took a little while to get kind of the composition right. Some people came on, some people left. But as of right now, our team is, we have an attorney, we have a licensed psychologist, we have people who've started their own brick and mortar businesses, we have people who are top coders in the world, largely, back-end devs. And so we have this interesting mix where I think everybody but maybe one person on the team at least knows some Solidity. I just know a little, but I know some. And most of us have, 1, 2, 3 programming languages, even if we're an attorney or a psychologist or in business. And so we have a good tech background. We have a good business background. We have a good behavioral data science background. And we have people who've been trading crypto. I think most of us are at about 5 years, but a couple of the team are close to 10 years of trading. Some of them got rugged in Mount Gox or things like that, where they were buying Bitcoin for $50 or $20. And
wait, what? That was a thing?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure one of our teammates has receipts for it's either $10 or $50 Bitcoin. He was just buying them all the time, but somebody with all his money. So centralized exchanges, right? So circling back, huge crypto. I mean, I'm going to say something that's going to sound like the craziest moon boy.
Okay.
Not because I'm a moon boy, but because I understand the scope of finance.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance that the notional value of all derivatives in the world, derivatives are assets that derive their value from other assets.
Okay.
Notional value of all derivatives will be at least $1 quadrillion within 10 years.
Wait, so assets that derive from other assets. So it's like if you have something here and this is the derivative of this asset when you pull. Okay.
So let me back up a little bit. When I was in college, I was trading commodities and options in the 90s and early 2000s. So I started trading derivatives in the 90s and early aughts. And so I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to place a bet more or less on gold. And so option to buy gold at a certain price. It derives its value from this other asset, gold.
Which is gold. Okay.
Right. That's a derivative.
Got it.
The derivatives market is huge. It's at least $100 trillion in notional value right now.
This now makes sense. This This feels like cryptocurrency as well. I feel like cryptocurrency is a derivative.
Well, most cryptos are. I mean, like you might argue, I would argue that Bitcoin probably isn't a derivative. It's probably an asset. And Ethereum probably isn't a derivative either. But everything that's an ERC token, we could think of as an Ethereum derivative, because usually in the trading pair, they're paired with Ethereum. And so they derive their notional value or their actual value from the Ethereum pair.
Dr. Ellis, you need to talk to the SEC and explain to them that we are not we're not something you can own. We're derivative. Do not come tax us like a property or something.
It's an interesting notion. I mean, I hope this doesn't end up in a deposition or something. But like, is it property? Is it code? Is it information? Is it a derivative? Is it a collectible digital art? I mean, like. There's not, this is the thing people have trouble grasping. What cryptocurrency is and all the associated derivatives, NFTs, et cetera, it's truly a new asset class.
Right.
That's what people don't understand. Now, does that mean it's awesome? Does it mean it's terrible? I mean, you can have all your you can like it, you can hate it, you think it's terrible, you think it's great, but it's a genuinely new asset class. It's only happened about 10 times in human history. We've had like beads, shiny
shiny pennies. Give me all the what they use. Did they use clams or something? Was clams one time?
Yeah, I think clam shells were used. But it's like beads, shells or something like that, shiny rocks, stocks, bonds, and then early derivatives, option. and then
Yep.
cryptocurrency and NFTs.
Yep.
And these are truly new asset classes. The last time that really happened was probably 400 years ago at the birth of the modern corporation. Now, you may love corporations, hate them, whatever. They drove massive financial change, and they were a totally new asset class that had never really existed before. The same thing is true with crypto. And so getting back to the derivative part, the crypto space, and I'm not alone in this. You can look up some pretty basic fintech guys, guys who use JP Morgan things. They will tell you that about 10 years out, there's every expectation that the notional derivatives market will at least be $1 quadrillion. That's 1,000 trillion, 1 million billion. And I believe that 20 to 30% of that, 20 to 30%, not the majority, but 20 to 30% will be some form of crypto asset, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, NFT, something that maybe hasn't even come out yet. I mean, there may be new emergent assets.
Metaverse.
But But crypto itself, broadly understood, decentralized finance, broadly understood, will be 200 to 300 trillion dollars within a decade.
You are killing me, but I feel like these numbers are achievable because if we look at the stock market and then we look at crypto and we're in the beginning. This is nothing. Your investment now could be a derivative that pays off in the future,
Right. So there's huge opportunity in this space. Well, another way to say it, there's a lot of blood in the water that attracts sharks and leeches. And there are, when we first started this, so we all were kind of involved in this rug pull, not involved as in we're in the project, we got burned by it. And again, the more experienced of us, we had calibrated our risk accordingly, but many of the new folks had not. And so we wanted to resurrect the project in the community, and we wanted to fight rug pulls. And initially that was kind of our focus, was fighting rug pulls. And in order to do that, we had to take a deep dive into the dark world of crypto. And we found all sorts of networks. There are literally bot contracts that will create a honeypot or will create a pump and dump token. It's all automated. Once it gets enough value in BNB, it will dump and then create 3 or 4 more of itself, and it'll keep replicating. They're literally like viral contracts out there, just like siphoning off BNB. There are shops that consistently produce meme tokens, ERC tokens that are basically pump and dump, but they generate a huge liquidity pool that you can come back later and claim. We found all sorts of things about the space. We found all sorts of networks. And I think we a little bit people got the wrong idea that we're like the police, which I'm not a cop. I do not want to become one. I'm not hating on cops. I'm just saying that was not my life path. But we found all of these dark corners. Yes. And initially we were trying to predict and prevent rug pulls. And we got pretty good at that. But what we found out was actually that's not that valuable, strangely enough, because 80 to 90% of ERC tokens will fail within 90 days.
I've heard the statistic. I keep trying to look to see if it's a true fact or just something in the rumor mill.
That's me. I went through, so with some help from Token Sniffer, they gave me a data of I think it was the 25,000 most recent ERC contract launches.
Oh yeah, so R. So what R is, it's an analytics platform. So you can input that data, and you were able to be like, oh wait, look, 80 to 90% of these are failing.
Yeah, so Token Sniffer will put it about 20%, and these are like automated honeypot things like that. But I also manually, I spot checked manually a sample of the most recent ones, and what I found was that a lot of them were really pump and dumps where they would come back, and I would watch the transactions for some of these older scams. People would come back and mine the Ethereum from the pool. So it's like tokens are locked for 1 year. Well, 1 year later they come back and they just grab the Ethereum. And so they're constantly churning out these tokens. And so what I found out is that about 80%, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, it kind of depends on some other factors, but about 80% of tokens will catastrophically fail within about 90 days. And so predicting a rug pull isn't hard. I could just go rug pull, rug pull, rug pull, rug pull. And 8 times out of 10, I'm going to be right. But in understanding this in a deep way, we found 2 really interesting things. And this is where the plot thickens. We found the factors that lead to catastrophic failure, so that if you're building a token or a team, you can mitigate these factors and dramatically decrease your risk of failure. So what we basically did is we figured out a methodology to help a token or team go from an 80% chance of failure to an 80% chance of success. Now, it's still not great. And success is very narrowly defined, like still functional in 90 days, right? It's a very low bar. But in this space, that's actually quite unusual.
Right.
And so we found a methodology to help teams that mean well launch. And we also found a methodology to identify gems. So we could find the ones that are 80% likely to still be around, as opposed to 80% likely to be dust. And so while we were initially looking to prevent rug pulls, and we're still doing that, we're doing that by helping to equip good teams to succeed rather than being the cops or whatever and just identifying the bad ones. Because there's so many out there. And if you go into other chains, side chains, it's even worse. But it's about 8 in 10 ERC tokens would fail. I just did a quick scan of BSC and some other things. It seems like it's even worse.
BSC, I feel like is 99%. I keep getting wrecked on BSC. I like, how does this keep happening?
Well, because you can automate. It's so much cheaper for transactions. I can now automate, launch a contract that once it's got a sufficient pool, it copies itself. It does it just pulls from a dictionary of interesting names. And
wait, so Dr. Ellis, one of the things that I wanted to hear you repeat was you were talking about like corporations and how like everything's tied to a corporation. What did you mean when you were talking about corporations before?
Oh, so okay. So little trip down memory lane. Well, not our memories. We weren't alive then. So corporation, it's actually a term from alchemy originally. And at the court of Queen Elizabeth, she had basically a sorcerer, an alchemist, John Dee, who came up with this concept of incorporating an entity, like taking an entity and magically creating one. Okay. And this is the birth of the modern corporation.
Okay.
And so if you look at like the Dutch East Indies Corporation or some of these that were founded around 1600, they lasted for hundreds of years. They outlived anyone who created them or anybody who was in the first generation or two that worked for them. They created these sort of immortal entities.
I see. You basically made like McDonald's, right? McDonald's is going to outlive all of us. McDonald's is an entity that's owned by, people. But in the end, we think of it as a corporation, but really, I understand what you're saying. This is crazy.
Here's what's wild about the corporation. First off, is a brilliant idea.
It is.
It runs on.
It keeps you going forever. You were going to sustain through life, through the time. Amazon is going to. Oh my God, this is mind blowing. This is mind blowing.
But here's what's wild about it. What keeps a corporation going is agreements and human activity. So, what grew up with that is basically contract law. People would sign contracts. People would have employment contracts. People would have, I'm going to deliver these goods. So it's run by legal agreements and people's performative behavior. A smart contract doesn't need people. If you launch a smart contract, even if it's a scam, right? If you launch a smart contract, as long as the Ethereum network stays up or whatever network it's on, it will run forever. Because all it needs is the network to stay up.
As long as there's able bodies feeding into the network, that network is going to have, it's about that end user base. How do you constantly have people coming back? Ethereum's done it because, hey, you can make money on this, and people are like, oh, I want to make money. I'm going to jump in. Crypto's the next thing.
Ethereum's done it because it's created a permissionless world computer that is going to disrupt law. See, people saying cryptocurrency will disrupt payments or whatever. I mean, that's true. I take that as a given. It's going to disrupt law. Let me tell you something. If you and I create a smart contract and we launch it, let's say on the Ethereum chain, right? And you sue me for my tokens, nobody can get them. Even if a judge writes a writ and says, give me the tokens, if you don't have the key, there is no court that can compel you. If you have a bank, somebody can garnish your wages and garnish your account, put a lien on your car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of the things most people don't understand. Nobody owns anything in the United States or anywhere else.
Right. You don't own what you think you own. It's just mentally you feel secure that you purchase something and it has value. This is why I'm very intrigued on metaverse as well. Dude, this is crazy. Continue.
So there's you ever watch Mr. Robot?
No, that's Iron Giant. No, I don't know. I don't watch too much American
Robot.
stuff.
I mean, it's weird and fun, but there's this one part of the plot turns on this company that has all the basically deeds to everything. That actually exists. There's a building that basically has the deed records for everything. That's who actually has custody of the property. That's who actually has custody of the deeds. You don't actually have that. It's not like you're going to go with this little like piece of paper, go, hey, I own this building. There's actually a central custodian that has all of these currently. And so what's interesting about decentralization is you basically have two options. You have either a centralized database. It could be the government, it could be Google, it could be, Amazon, but you have a centralized database that stores records, or you have a truly decentralized one. There's no other option of which I'm aware. And when people understand that the only way to have true sovereignty in transactions is to have some sort of true custody, it's a game changer. Now, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I actually don't own much of any Bitcoin. I'm very much Ethereum and Ethereum derivatives. But I mean, this is, I think you can see some of the Bitcoin maxis get really worked up about this. But this, I don't think most people understand what is really happening with the blockchain. I mean, there's the quote from years ago. It took me a while to understand. I'll be blunt. It took me about 3 years to really understand this quote. Bitcoin is not money for the internet. It's the internet of money. And now it's not just Bitcoin. Bitcoin in itself is it's
Bitcoin itself is a network that's just unbelievable, like the way that it's been made. If only we knew the founder, but I think the anonymity that Bitcoin provides is also what keeps the users coming back, because it really feels like the grandfather of this space,
It is. That said, the more realized versions are later tokens, or more precisely later networks.
Right.
Because you can disaggregate the financial functions of money. So money does at least three things. Now, we almost never think about this because they always co-occur. But money does at least three things. One, it serves as an accounting principle, right? Now, let's say you have 3 quarters in your pocket. You go, how much money do I have? Well, you look in your pocket, I have 3 quarters, right? We don't really think of it, but it's an accounting thing. It's not like it magically turns to 4 or it turns to 2. However much paper money or fiat money you have on your person is an accounting thing, right? So money serves an accounting function. We don't usually think of it that way, but it does.
Right.
Money also serves as a store of value. So for the most part, even though inflation happens, and most times it's relatively slow, most developed countries or most countries that are not at war, things like that, inflation is relatively slow. It may eat into your savings over time, but it doesn't do it in a day. So if I have a $5 bill in my pocket and I go to the store and I give it to somebody, and then they go and they give it to somebody else, it's still worth $5 at the end of that.
Right. It's a stable coin in real life.
It's a store of value, right?
So, or a value. It's a stored value.
Accounting, there's store of value. And then it's also a medium of exchange, which is I can give you the $5 and you give me a good or a service, and you can give the $5 to somebody else and they'll give you a good or service. With crypto, we can disaggregate and remix the functions of money. You can have something that's just a ledger, right? So like So IBM uses blockchain. There's a lot of companies that are using blockchain now, not as a cryptocurrency, but as a
private blockchain. Yeah.
Just to track. So it's an account. Yes. Where did this lettuce come from? How many car parts are available, right? Yes. And so that can be an accounting function. It can be a tracking function, maybe for certified diamonds or things like that, like a kind of a verification function. So some forms of blockchain are just accounting. They're not actually a currency or a store of value. It's the information. It's the ledger.
Right.
There's other ones that are pretty much about transactions. They're really geared for fast transactions and settlement very rapidly. There's other ones that are really geared as a store of value. And arguably, Bitcoin as a currency, as a transaction settler, isn't great. It's not horrible, but it's not great.
Yeah.
But as a store of value, that's primarily what it's doing. Now, there's other faster cryptocurrencies that have, they're more rapid. They have lower transaction fees. They're probably better for settlement.
Right.
As all of these things start to come apart and remix, the nature of money itself is changing because these functions are now disaggregated in ways that previously couldn't happen.
Right. Wait, so you are blowing my mind left and right, Dr. Ellis. Like, I came in here, I'm like, let's talk DOXX, and here we are talking about all the things you have learned in this space. And it's like, guys, I have learned. I went through this experience. This is what, I read about. It's evident that you're very, very knowledgeable. Now we know what Dr. Ellis has educated himself on. What makes DOXX? What is the reason that RMDox needs to be in this space, that other vendors, such as Certic, I forget the other auditing companies, but now they're coming out of nowhere. They set a price, but I know RMDox's price at point, and the way that you guys do something is revenue, right? Revenue is really, it's like return of revenue that helps feed your system. Can you explain?
Let's talk about a couple things. I mean, I love that. I'll have to avoid the geeking out a bit, but
I geek out because I'm a tech guy, and so like this happens to me, and then I have ADHD, so it's like it's twice as worse. I'm like, this is so entertaining. I need to know more. I need to know more.
So in part, RMDox is a hybrid of several things that have never really existed before. It's a company. It's not a company in the corporate sense, but it's a group of individuals who are performing services. And so in the process of trying to stop rug pulls, we actually learned so many things that are not in the space. And we've checked. There are things we know that are not in the open source anywhere. They're not, Uniswap has never written about them. Vitalik has never written about them. As far as we can tell, we're either the only ones who know it or nobody has opened their mouth if they know it. We know things about how AMMs, automated market makers, and the relationship between burn addresses and liquidity pools function that nobody else has. In fact, one of the patents we're applying for is actually a proprietary algorithm for optimizing the balance between these variables so that you have a stable production over the long run. Nobody's ever looked at this before, to the best of my knowledge. We have an understanding of how NFTs can serve as both identifiers and anonymizers at the same time in a permissionless network that actually builds trust. That's the first patent we filed for.
Wait, you filed a patent?
I've had previous patents granted in AI technology, yes, and we're now cranking out a string of them for blockchain, because there's things no one's thinking about. Now, I mean, we may end up putting them in the public domain just so Zuckerberg doesn't get them. But
this is what, because he's coming. He's coming. He's already had to turn off many AI bots.
Yeah, well, if a centralized authority gets control of these, it could be problematic. Now,
yes,
decide what to do with it later, but more importantly, as a team, we've learned some of these principles that nobody else understands.
Yeah.
We tried to have discussions with people, and they think we're nuts because that doesn't matter. Yes, actually, it matters a ton. And so we found a whole range of factors that contribute to success or failure of a token, of a team. Those are behavioral, interpersonal, background characteristics, and also of liquidity pools and their use and whatnot. So putting that together, our token itself is an experiment in this, right? What we're doing is we're going to use some of the revenue we generate through our actual business, where we're providing a blockchain services contracting company, to burn and destroy supply and add liquidity to our own token. So as the token goes up, it's going to perform in certain ways that, I mean, you may have seen other tokens that do burns. They're like hyper burn, that, and they're both right and wrong, right? So some of them are wrong because they're too optimistic about the burn. Others are wrong because they're not optimistic enough. But there's actually, I've come up with an equation to describe the parameters, which is really hard to do. It's a remarkably simple equation. I'm not going to say anything more about it, other than if you've seen other things about how some of the more complex, they're not that complex, it's still algebra, but some of the more complex balancer pools work. The equation is remarkably similar. It's not the same, but you can see how the terms are closely related. So that there's probably a curve function that's going on in a particular way that is similar to how the AMMs are set up themselves. But in this case, it's a relationship between the pool, the AMM, the debt address, and other things. So we have a token that basically plays into that. And so we're going to be providing a real service, which is we help to launch, because we can help them identify things that would lead to a day one failure and mitigate them. We're going to help people to bridge the gap between off-chain and on-chain technology, because that's where, if you want to see the biggest play of the decade, it's going to be whoever can help off-chain businesses, off-chain assets, off-chain activities bridge safely, effectively, and profitably into on-chain presence. And
you are basically giving tokens utilities with these off-chain. I understand you are blowing my mind, sir. Dr. Ellis, you are blowing my mind. You are literally giving tokens everything they need to succeed. You're showing them how to do it. You're giving them the rule book, right? Like, hey guys, this is the rule book. Follow this, you'll be good. But not only that, you also give them the run book. This is exactly what you need to do in order to succeed. And
which brings us to the next part.
yeah.
What I found is that the networks in crypto aren't just malicious actors in terms of scammers and things like that.
Right.
They're also specific pump networks that are tied with influencers on Twitter and other social media, predominantly Twitter, but not exclusively.
Right.
And that they obviously act in concert. And they act in concert to manipulate markets, to manipulate DEX tool scores, to manipulate trending, to manipulate, like these things are all highly manipulated. And so if you're starting out as a team, you might go, oh, hey, I want to spend money on advertising, right? And so you give some money to an influencer and they basically do nothing, or they do one retweet, but it doesn't have much impact. If you look at our token, we're at what, like a 2 million market cap? We have routinely made it into the top 100 on Lunar Crush, routinely. We are punching 1,000 times over our market cap because we understand how these networks get amplified. And even with our small team, we can organically generate similar levels of social activity to tokens that are literally 1,000x our market cap or 10,000. We have flipped Bitcoin and Doge on certain days.
How are you doing this?
I'm not going to tell you how.
I don't understand. There's some secret sauce in all these patents.
So there's secret sauce for NFT identity. There's secret sauce for liquidity pool that is sustainable versus. So okay, which would you rather have? A token that has 10% reflections, 1% reflections, or 5% reflections?
I would rather have a token that's going to list on an exchange first.
Actually, you don't.
Really?
I'll give you one piece of secret sauce right now.
Okay.
Exchange listings solidify pricing at 1 to 4x of current value. If you launch on a certain exchange too soon, you solidify your price in a lower range. If you launch at an exchange at a high valuation, you stabilize your price at a higher valuation. So there's actually some strategy to when you launch as to what the outcome is for a token. There are some tokens that have almost no utility. They've just been languishing for years, but they still have a fairly high market cap because they're traded on a range of centralized exchanges and they got on at a high market cap. So even if they lost 90% of their value, if you're at 10 billion, you lose 90%, you're still at $1 billion. On the other hand, if you get on too soon or you get on the wrong exchanges too soon, you actually stabilize your market cap very low.
Wait, I have a hypothetical right now. So let's say I have a token, like this is from DOXX's mouth, right? So, or a hypothetical. If there is a token out there and one of the things on launch date that they're using to launch is we're going to get a token listing on an exchange in 2 weeks. Is that token going to be more successful than a token that just launches, clear, like community-driven token that doesn't have an exchange listing on the roadmap yet, but it's something they're going to work on? Which one in your eyes would you deem more successful?
If the token has a large member base and true utility, they will build more over time. Now they're going to be more volatile. You could think of a centralized exchange as to some degree, it stabilizes volatility because now you have arbitrage opportunities.
I take all those opportunities if I can.
Right. But what does that do? Besides, maybe making money for the person or the bot that's arbitraging, it stabilizes within a range, or it slows the descent or slows the ascent.
Right.
So if you understand, it's almost like electrical engineering. Like there are certain principles with capacitors and resistors
and transistors.
Yep.
I've sat through so many electrical engineering classes because I did computer engineering. So you have to do electrical and computer. And then I did a computer science minor. So it's like, dude, I cannot look at transistors anymore. And my best friend ends up going to Otis for circuit design. And I'm like, dude, those classes were miserable. How can you stand doing this for a living?
So one of the things we'd say is like, you need to, so, do you want 2%, 5%, or 10%? The answer to everything, if you ever go to grad school, is it depends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it depends is a bit of a cop-out answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
What it really does, it depends on specific factors. And we haven't identified all of them, but we've identified some of them.
Huh.
And there are some tokens that are reflections tokens that actually we can tell are going to do fairly well, provided the project doesn't rug. And there's other ones that we can tell will struggle. In part, it's based on the liquidity pool as a percentage of the market cap that's outstanding. But also in part, it's a ratio between several different factors, including the debt address if it's burned to one, reflections, and liquidity. And these actually, they provide a range. And if a token is in this range, it seems like it's going to be healthy. If it's dramatically out of that range and they're trying to do the reflections thing, it will either turn off people because it just will change the behavior,
Mm-hmm.
or it's going to result in insufficient liquidity. And over time, the liquidity is going to get wrecked. And so there's actually a range of these factors that we've identified. And like I said, it was really, really painful, but I think I've come up with a descriptor for the upper and under range for the liquidity pool as a function of these other variables.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so I have so many, oh my God, like you are blowing my mind. But real quick, I see this picture and I see this other gentleman. Is this the Bitcoin creator?
No, well, if it is, crack me up.
Just tell me.
Philip,
Blink twice.
That's Philip Zimbardo. So he did
Okay.
Famous experiments in social psychology and how groups of people can corrupt behavior. So he has a book called The Lucifer Principle. And he's famous for saying it's not, for the most part, it's not bad apples, it's bad barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we found in crypto influencer space is there are bad apples, but it's mainly bad barrels. There are some social norms that lead to behavior that in any other domain would be pretty intolerable,
Mm-hmm.
but it's pretty tolerated here and just taken as a given. And it doesn't need to be that way. Now, I'm not anybody's pappy. Well, I'm two kids pappy, but other than that, I'm not anybody's pappy. I'm not going to come tell you how to do crypto.
Yeah.
But what I can do is say that certain things are predictable in terms of whether something's going to pump, dump, languish. And again, you don't have to be right. You don't have to be right all the time. If you're right 4 times in 5, you're going to outperform the market in a dramatic way. That's valuable information.
Yes. Wait, so I have a follow-up question. I'm sorry, you are blowing my mind. I know we're still going to talk about DOXX. I just want to know from what you've researched with DOXX, right? So some of these tokens that we've seen in our DeFi space have lost, let's say, 90% to 95% of their value from their all-time high.
Sure.
Are there things that this token, in your eyes, from what you've seen, are these types of tokens still able to recover? Or is that it? Because I'll tell you, I work as a CTO of Shibnobi, right? So one of the things that we're dealing with right now is exchanges want to list us, like, the tier 1 exchanges, but they've all come back to us and say, we don't have the volume. Shinja, you don't have the volume. So what we thought as a solution is we go to the tier 3 exchanges, we get, we spread our masses out and our token out, and we get more volume that way. Is that a reasonable way for even Shinja itself, who's lost some traction since the all-time high, to gain back to the all-time high? What do you suggest for these types of tokens?
It could be. So let's start with Shinja. Is Shinja deflationary?
Yeah.
Okay. How is it deflationary?
Did we do manual burns?
Okay. So manual burns actually have a different calculation than automatic burns.
Okay.
So what's the highest calc you've taken?
Pre-calc.
Oh, okay.
I am not. No.
Okay.
No calculus.
So
math is no good for me.
All right. We'll do an analogy.
Okay.
So, okay. Let's say you're in a car. We'll use the easier analogy.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a car. You set cruise control at 70 miles an hour. That's change, right? It's a steady change. You're moving at 70 miles an hour. If you accelerate, that's change in change, right? Acceleration.
Right.
And if you stomp on the accelerator, or you have a Tesla or whatever, and you go to ludicrous speed, you get
beast mode. I go to beast mode all the time. No, I'm just kidding.
So you get a jerk, which is a change in change, right?
Yeah.
If you do a manual burn, you change the supply. You change the supply, you change the supply.
Right.
If you have an automated burn, you change the supply. And if you have a burn where it's actually magnetized through reflections, you change the change in changing supply. You end up getting a curve that looks like a singularity. That's different from a linear, it's not a linear downhill slope. You actually end up getting a curvilinear and highly curvilinear function.
Okay. So does that curve continue to trend downwards, or what would RMDox suggest to these?
I've been trying to build a Python simulation for all this because it's actually pretty complicated. You got to estimate buys and then how it changes the liquidity pool. It's actually a hot mess. It's probably almost easier to just launch a contract and run 1,000 iterations on Rinkeby or something. But I've been trying to model this, and what appears to be the case is that there's a fundamental difference between burns where the dead address receives reflections and it's an auto burn versus manual burns or even fixed burns that are contractual burns. And I don't think anybody knew this when they started out. It was sort of an accidental thing or work. But the dead address is going to end up doing things that nobody understands. And when I say this, I'm not being flip. Vitalik doesn't understand what the dead address is going to become. It's going to be a museum. It's going to be an archive. It's going to be a monster that eats supply. The dead address is going to end up being so many different things. And it's not just when in doubt, burn extra tokens. It's going to end up being a creature that no one has anticipated.
You are blowing my mind. So one of the things that Shibnobi did, so that we've going through, is we turned on reflections to our dead address, our burn wallet, and that caused a change in all the tokens where everyone lost tokens because the dead address was supposed to be allocated X%, the R owned value of the balance, and it goes, hey, I don't have this anymore. I need to normalize the blockchain. So everyone got the same percentage when those tokens were removed from supply. But this is one of the things, because should we have left the auto burn on? And because what we ended up doing later on, once we realized, this happened, it was reverted. We turned off the reflections on that. Now I start to wonder, from what you've said, should I have left the auto burn on, or
this is the thing. There are 100,000 or more. I mean, there's probably close to 1 million smart contracts across all chains.
Right.
But there's 100,000 experiments that are happening, many of them accidentally.
Right.
Like just that feature that wasn't expected, but it happened.
No, it wasn't. It did.
And these are some of the things where it's not just enough to go, okay, if you have this contract, don't do that, so you don't get this. You go, well, what is actually happening here? Why is that occurring? And how does that affect distribution? And if your contract is renounced, what does that mean? If your contract is mutable and you can adjust it, what does that mean? There are certain things with elastic supply. There are certain things with inelastic supply that just play out differently. And I mean, some of these things, I will tell you, I've been active in the space since 2017. Some of my teammates have been active since 2013. There are things that we did not understand for the last 3 months when we took an incredibly deep dive on this stuff. And there are some things I'm pretty sure our team understands. As far as I can tell, no one else in the world does. And that's a hell of a claim. It's just because some of this stuff is so new. I mean, look at Uniswap. Uniswap is what, a couple of years old? Pancake Swap's like 14 months, 15 months old. This stuff is very, very new. And so some of these things are unintended consequences, bad, good, and neutral, but they will change how finance plays out, and they'll change the derivatives market forever, which will change finance forever.
Wait, but Dr. Ellis, which is better? Which is better?
So, all right, this is where RMDoXX comes in. To answer that question in any particular case, we need to do a detailed consultation with the token in question.
Got it.
We need to deeply understand, and this is where I go beyond. I understand the.
I guess I'm not asking for just Shinja or any other token. What I'm asking is, in general, from what you've seen from your analyses, one, what have you found is better for tokens? Is an auto burn feature better, or is manual burn better?
Manual burn generates hype, but it doesn't really affect the tokenomics.
Okay.
Auto burn, it over time creates certain dynamics within the exchange of tokens, within the transfer of tokens, that they just have a power it's almost unimaginable. And I'm really trying not to sound like a crazy person on a soapbox here.
I understand. That's more than enough said.
Okay, let me give you an example.
Okay.
So let me just ask you one question. Do you think Ethereum will still be here in 20 years?
I do.
Okay. So my assumption is if Ethereum is still here in 20 years, we don't have a...
But the real question is it going to be Ethereum or Ethereum 2.0?
Yeah, well, but okay. But like, let's say anything that has some chain lineage to the current Ethereum blockchain.
Okay, fair.
So,
fair.
you know what I mean? Like there's Ethereum class.
Yes, I believe there will be.
But like, you know, if there's some chain lineage to the present blockchain.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe if it's here in 20 years, it's gonna be here in 500 years.
Okay.
Because there'll be enough vested interest at that point that it will be kept or retained in some fashion. Now, maybe it'll be subsumed in a different network when quantum computing comes online or other things. There are kinds of things that could occur. There also could be a true black swan event, coronal mass ejection that like wipes out the network. I mean, there are tail risk events, but assuming it's here in 20 years, I think it's going to end up surviving for hundreds of years, just like the modern corporation. Some of the corporations are almost 400 years old at this point.
Right.
And if you ignore the corporate status, there are some businesses that are 1,000 years old, especially in Japan. So that legacy of kind of transmission across generations is going to occur.
Right.
If you believe that, what happens to a token that is 2% deflationary over decades?
You are going to make that token very scarce.
Yes.
And that brings up value. The scarcer your token is, the more value that you could potentially get buy and sell orders for, depending on sentiment and stuff. But
so if I linear burn, like, you know, every week I burn 10,000 or 50,000 of a token, I burn another 50,000. It's exciting. But what happens is the amount destroyed goes down because the dollar value, you know, per token changes. So the amount of tokens taken out of supply decreases. The asymptotic function goes one way.
Okay.
If you use the dead address with reflections, it goes the other way. The asymptotic function increases the pull of supply.
Okay. Now, okay. So now what if you have utilities that continue to burn your token as you use those utilities? And I'm not trying just for Shinobi Gaming, but I'm trying because there could be listeners of tokens right now listening in being like, what is ARM.DOXX suggest, you know?
I mean, I'm not trying to sell any of these tokens. In fact, you know, I'm not. Okay. So, you know, that's an idea for Shinobi. That's an idea for Saitama. That's an idea for SafeMoon, right?
Right, exactly.
So the idea here is if you combine utility with deflation, you end up in a hyper scarcity. And there's nothing like that in the world. The rest of the world doesn't work that way. Baby rabbits don't have fewer baby rabbits. They have a ton of rabbits. There's an overproduction and then a trim back. But true deflation doesn't really exist in nature in this way. It doesn't exist with instruments, you know, financial instruments for the most part in this way. It's not like if I transfer you an ounce of gold, a bit of the gold in the world disappears. Right?
Right.
But with
you can't destroy that gold. That's why gold's a commodity, right? You get whatever you transfer, it still holds that same value.
Yes.
That's that entity, that form that stores value that you were talking about, right?
But now imagine if somebody on the other side of the world hands gold to somebody and all of our gold gets more valuable because his disappears a little. And now imagine
I'd be very happy.
Imagine that happening hundreds of times a second.
I am a rich man at that point.
Imagine that happening hundreds of times a second over decades.
I am very rich and my kids are rich and everyone
You've got
is rich in my
family. This is a perpetual motion machine. Now, there's no perpetual motion machine in physics.
I understand.
You still need energy input, but as long as there's energy input into the Ethereum blockchain, all the Ethereum derivatives and anything that's an ERC token, that includes ARM.DOXX as an Ethereum derivative, will generate value. We trade in an Ethereum pair. If Ethereum goes up, ARM.DOXX goes up, right?
Right.
So coming back to ARM.DOXX, and we have to wrap up here in probably 5 minutes. I know we've been geeking out, but like coming back to ARM.DOXX.
Wait, do you have a hard cutoff time?
Yeah, like 8:10. Yes.
Okay. Well, wait, real quick, because I know there's questions already. We
Okay.
have to talk about Zion. I want to know the proper pronunciation, how you came up with the name, and the other thing, chargeable. My DMs are going crazy. You guys are partnered with somebody. We want to know more about that. So you have 10 minutes. Take it away.
Okay. So Zion is a name that Haas, one of our developers, came up with, because initially it was sort of like secret, and he's a Matrix fan, so it's Zion. That's just where it comes from. It's a Matrix homage, but basically what Zion is a scoring methodology. It's the algorithm for determining the relative risk of a team and token. And that particular algorithm is proprietary. And I, without going into details, I'll tell you that it looks at things that nobody else does. So Celsius or, Wintermute or whatever, they have people who are trading and they're looking at arbitrage opportunities. They're looking at risk as a quant or a fintech person, but they're not looking at any of these behavioral, social, or other dimensions. And I won't say which ones, because there are some that are surprisingly predictive, even though they don't make sense, or they do make sense, but like they're counterintuitive at first glance. So we have a proprietary scoring tool that we can assess the risk of tokens. And so one way we can use that is to work with a token that's about to launch. So maybe charge. And we could work with a token. We can understand what's going on with them. Now, I'm a little reticent to talk about a token that's in process, but let's say, for instance, you have a token where somebody's never launched anything in the blockchain. They don't have any computer science, electrical engineering background, and they're going to make a stab at it. What do you think the odds are of success?
I feel like 40-50%, maybe. It's a 50-50 shot.
Well, the baseline chance of success is 20%. Are they probably better or worse than the average?
They could be better, but that doesn't mean anything.
They could be, but that wouldn't be the safe bet, right?
Yeah. So
All
they're
right.
probably better than average. They're like 90% better, probably.
Okay. Now, let's say you look at somebody who has, I don't know, let's say a master's in computer science or electrical engineering. They know multiple coding languages, so they can think about how code works, arrays, broadcasting. They can think of using code, things like that. And they spend a lot of time on the test net. You can actually see data on the test net showing that they have kicked the tires on a contract well before, just turning it live. Do you think they're going to have a better chance of success or worse?
I feel like they're going to have way better because they tested it before they launched, which is a thing you're supposed to do.
Right. So here's the thing. You were talking about Surtech and other ones. They will tell you the code works, right? And that's a valuable function. That's a very valuable function, in fact. But they won't tell you if the people administering it know how the code works and can make it work reliably over the long term.
I agree.
Surtech can tell you the code works, but they can't tell you whether the person is going to extract the liquidity.
Right.
Token Sniffer will do a really good job of catching automated honeypots. I mean, it's very useful for that, in fact.
Yeah.
But there's just so many tokens, they can't do a deep dive on most of them. It won't tell you, it can tell you how much liquidity is locked and what the relative risk is, but it won't tell you if the person is just patient. They launch a scam a day and they're just going to come back for the liquidity in 6 months or 12 months.
Yeah, it can't. It can't. These are things that it can't do, but DOXX can do these things. DOXX has a thing that you have, which is internal. You haven't given us the secret sauce in this AMA, but we know, dude, even from Dr. Ellis, even from you just talking on this AMA, and I know you're running out of time, but I still want to ask if any of you guys in the chat, you have questions, please start listing them because we're running out of Dr. Ellis's time, and he's big brain, guys. Like I think I'm big brain, but I'm only big brain in what I know. But like it's evident, man.
But I'm on a team, so we were first getting together on our team. I said, I had to take a professional licensing exam. I'm in the top 10% of my profession, right? I feel really good about that.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure one of the other team members is probably in the top 10 or 20 in the world for what he does.
Okay.
So I'm proud.
Wait, so what is that? Like AI, like in order to get top percentages like that, you guys need to know like advanced AI, like simulations, or you're able to like you're working in Jupyter notebooks. Like you must be doing something crazy.
Jupyter's that's my bag. I love Jupyter.
Okay, I got you. I understand what you
Julia,
guys.
Python, and R. Let's stick them all in the same.
That would all make sense. You basically have set yourself up to do analysis, infrastructure analysis, even look at tokenomics and charts over
Although,
time.
to be honest, I don't use Julia that much. It's just
Yeah.
use Python and
Oh
Python.
And R, I'm assuming R is your.
I know R. I mean, I have R stickers all over my computer, but honestly, it's gonna sound a little nasty. I do a lot of my data cleaning in spreadsheets now, and then I just use Python for big automation.
Yeah, because you can. Yeah, I do that in real time too. Like especially when file lands in a folder. Okay, Python, listen for file. Yep. Okay, grab file, do stuff, return. Store that in a database.
If I ever get around to making dashboards, Shiny and some of the tools in R are definitely much better.
Yeah. I've now gotten used to Tableau, and I don't know how to feel because I feel like I'm being corporatized or something. I'm like, dude, I've seen R, and now I'm looking at Tableau, and they're making it so seamless. And then AWS with their quick site, and I'm like, oh my God, these tools just keep coming. And I need that human recognizability where it's like I can go from tool to tool and know where the basic stuff is. But the way that analytics is, it's not like that. And true data scientists, they learn a lot. They're the true geniuses here.
Yeah, and I tend to think of myself as a junior data scientist, but that's because I'm kind of benchmarking pretty high. I've taught statistics at the graduate level, so I'm decent with it.
Oh wow, this is crazy, Dr. Ellis. You are literally. Here we go. Big A Armory, a very brief, all is good summary of chargeable would be great. But even before that, Dr. Ellis, why haven't you guys applied for Dojo Swap yet? We are a swap. We exist. We are a cheap swap too. It would be good for you as well, because I am learning a lot from you, and being CTO does give me some
we should talk.
Insight. Yeah, we absolutely should. Because Dojo Swap real good.
I'd have for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. We should definitely talk. We'll talk after this, but you have blown my mind. You have blown my mind. I have learned a lot, but I'm also feeling good about my investments from what you have shared as well. But real quick, back to the question: can you give us a summary of chargeable?
So I still have to consult with a couple other people on the team, because part of what we do is we do real ID vetting. We do that, but based on the parameters of the team, and I don't want to give a score out yet. I got to talk to them too. But based on the parameters, I mean, they have a pretty impressive team, and I don't say that just because they're working with us in terms of vetting. Their team has competence that's uncommon. Now, there's other parameters that go into our assessment besides just the team. We also look at token dynamics, the contract, and all that. And then we assemble that into a composite score that's based on these. One of my colleagues has been working pretty intimately with them on the smart contract, and so we got to kind of put it all together in one succinct score. But so one of our teammates, David, he's an attorney. He used to do tracking down real ID for venture capital. So he would find, before they give $1 million to a guy, go, is this person real? So David handles that part. I handle the kind of parameter scoring and the kind of risk model. So he tells me they're the real people. I go, this is the risk model. Bob and Haas, they handle the basically the smart contract, liquidity pool, some of those parameters, and we put them into a composite score. It's actually very predictive of success or failure. And so I can tell you, at least on my piece, it's pretty impressive. But we want to get that holistic score. So I don't want to say a score right now. They're going to hear about it first before I say anything publicly. But I mean, at least on the part,
they flat out publicly said you two are partners, or you two have something. Is that something that is legitimate, or is that not okay?
So if they want to say stuff, they can say stuff. I don't say stuff until they say stuff.
They've said this stuff. Okay. I was on the Awesome Austin stream listening, and I guess they're doing like a pre-sale of another pre-sale V2 or something. So is that okay? Is that okay in your books, or are you not a pre-sale type guy?
We'll come out with a formal score. But again,
no. I'm not asking about the score. What I'm saying is, do you like projects that do pre-sales, or do you believe in projects that do fair launches? Sorry.
So is it a fair launch if you have bots that can bypass the mempool, et cetera, et cetera? Like, a fair launch means somebody like me gets an unfair advantage.
I know. I am very good at sniping now. I
so-
have learned.
In principle, I think a fair launch often isn't a fair launch. In practice, I'm a bit a fan of them,
Yeah.
but that's me and the fact that flashbots.
Yes. I got you. Oh man, I don't want to get you in trouble. I know we're running out of time here. Is there anything else that you want to discuss in like the last minute?
So I'll say a couple things.
Yes.
DOXX, we're a team. We provide services. We help tokens launch. We help tokens after launch. We help vet tokens. If you're an investor who's looking to get into a token, you want an independent score, we can do that. If you're a business that wants to get on the blockchain and needs some help in getting started and a general contractor for kind of crypto services, that's us. We also have a token. Some people are like, oh, what's your token? It trades on LBank under DOXX. It trades on Uniswap under Rick Morty DOXX. It's an homage to our roots and where we started. And that token, is available on the ERC network. Check your local regulations about whether it's appropriate for you. I'm not the attorney on the team, so I'm not going to make any statements that way. But we have an ERC token. It is deflationary, and it's deflationary based on the activity of the project. So that as the project derives value, that value is put into the token through a buy and burn that happens. It's also auto deflationary in terms of transactions. So some of these principles that we're very curious about, we put into play in our token and our tokenomics. It's a mostly renounced contract, which is we can still play with the tokenomics a little bit, but only within a parameter of 10%. So we can't rug anybody, you can't screw anybody over. And all of our token pools are in a smart contract where it's multi-sig. So none of us can say one dev ran away with everything.
Yeah.
There has to be multiple signatories to make something happen. I'm one of those signatories, so I bear some responsibility. But those signatories are located around the world, so you can't just show up all in the same block and get all of us. I like to say it takes 2 keys to fire off a nuke. It takes more than 2 keys to fire off a transaction for our core wallet.
Multi-sig wallets real good. We are a big fan of multi-sig wallets here.
And one thing I would say, since you know about Dojo Swap, we'd also be very happy to partner with centralized or decentralized exchanges to serve in a vetting capacity, or to look over or give a second pair of eyes to some of the code that may have been done, because there can be exploits, or there can be things that people don't think about, extra token parameters that play a role in how something does or does not function.
Yep. 1 second here. Just have a flicker. Okay, there we go. No, absolutely. Dojo Swap is amazing. I like the swap. I personally have also tested the swap myself. I put it through the OWASP framework and NIST frameworks, which are secure frameworks that people use every day.
My best friend
version, but now they've done multiple versions. They have another version coming out. So it's like I've audited the V1, but now we're on like V1.7. Who knows?
my best friend works at NIST. He's
awesome.
Nanotechnology.
Yes.
He's very smart, but man, I think there's some Nobel Prize winners down the hall.
Dude, one of the guys on my team, he's like, if you give him something and you tell him to hack into it, he'll hack into it. And I'm also a hackathon winner of AWS. I won 2 of their hackathons. So like the team that I work with is just like, ooh, give us something. Give me a voting machine. So that's next. No, I'm gonna
have to step away.
Yes. Dr. Ellis, thank you for joining me. I really hope you guys do come back, because I think this was a great promotional AMA. Like this was fun, man. I felt like we were chit-chatting, we were having a good time, and I've learned a lot. Like you have even the amount of people that are listening to you, I think it's evident that what you're talking about. DOXX is going places. So guys, we are going to end it.
Ready for a fun fact? I'm the first coder on the team.
You are way okay. I understand.